That feeling when you download a totally new app.
Oh yeah, the honeymoon phase.
Right, exactly. You open it for the very first time, and, well, before you've even read a single word on the screen, your thumb just instinctively drifts to the exact right spot.
It's like you already know how to use it.
Yeah. You don't have to search for the menu. You don't have to, decode the navigation at all. Your brain just maps the entire digital room in maybe, 300 milliseconds.
It feels completely effortless.
It feels like intuition.
Yeah.
Like you're just naturally good at using the software.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but it's a comforting illusion.
Wait, an illusion?
Yeah, completely. We crave that immediate, frictionless understanding, but when an interface fails to deliver it, when you open a dashboard and suddenly you're met with a wall of misaligned text, floating buttons, and no clear visual hierarchy.
I hate that, right?
Right. Your brain doesn't just register confusion, it actually registers a literal biological stress response.
I feel that. It's this visceral spike of anxiety, just a total get me out of here reaction, where I'm frantically swiping, trying to find the home screen.
Exactly. Your cortisol levels probably actually spike.
And if you are listening to this deep dive right now, especially if you were, just starting your career in UI or UX design, that dynamic is the entire ballgame.
It really is. It's the whole foundation.
You might be staring at a blank Figma canvas right now, paralyzed by where to put a button. And you're probably assuming that the great designers out there just have some, magical innate artistic talent.
Which is such a damaging myth for beginners.
It is. So today, we are tearing that myth down completely.
Because good design is absolutely not a mystical art form. It is a highly engineered, heavily calculated manipulation of human perception.
Which is exactly why we're pulling apart the mechanics of the human visual system today. We're diving deep into the source code of our own brains.
I love that framing.
And we are specifically using Chapter 06, which is titled Perception, from the book Design User Interface.
Such a crucial chapter.
It really is. And I want to set the mission for this deep dive right out of the gate. We are going to shortcut years of painful trial and error for your career by understanding the hardwired evolutionary shortcuts your users' brains are taking.
The foundational argument in that chapter completely reorients how a junior designer should approach their work.
How so?
Well, it introduces the rules of perception not as, arbitrary aesthetic choices, but as subconscious perceptive mechanisms.
Okay, unpack that a little bit for us.
Basically, our visual cortex doesn't process reality pixel by pixel. That would take far too much time and energy.
Right, our brains are lazy.
Exactly. Extremely efficient or lazy, however you want to look at it. Instead, our minds use a deeply ingrained set of evolutionary shortcuts to stitch partial, fragmented visual information into a coherent whole.
Wait, I want to challenge that slightly. If our brains are constantly taking shortcuts and stitching things together, aren't we prone to making massive mistakes?
Oh, absolutely. We do it all the time.
Isn't that why optical illusions work? It sounds like we're relying on a highly flawed biological system.
Optical illusions are actually the perfect proof of how rigid these systems are.
Really? How so?
They work precisely because our brain refuses to abandon its shortcuts, even when the visual data directly contradicts them.
Oh, wow. So it's stubborn.
Incredibly stubborn. Evolutionarily speaking, the brain is prioritizing speed over perfect accuracy.
Because speed keeps you alive.
Exactly. If you are a hunter-gatherer on the savannah and you see a pattern of orange and black stripes behind a bush,
You don't sit there analyzing the lighting.
right, your brain doesn't wait to process the individual hairs of the tiger.
Yes.
It uses predictive processing to say, tiger, run. It fills in the blanks instantly.
So the stakes are obviously a lot lower when we're looking at a food delivery app.
Hopefully, yes.
But the biological hardware is exactly the same. The brain is frantically looking for patterns so it doesn't have to burn calories analyzing every single icon on the screen.
That's the crux of it. The goal of this specific chapter, and really the goal for anyone building a career in this field, is to stop designing unknowingly.
Unknowingly.
I like that word. You can't just push pixels around until the layout vibes with you. When you understand these subconscious perceptive mechanisms, you transition from relying on gut instinct to making conscious, fact-backed decisions.
So you can actually defend your work.
Yes, you can sit in a product review meeting and explain the literal neuroscience of why the submit button needs to be isolated in the bottom right corner.
That is the superpower right there. It takes the subjective debate out of design.
It changes the conversation from "I like this" to "this is how the human brain works."
Okay, so let's get into the actual toolkit. The book starts breaking down visual order by focusing not on the objects themselves, but on the emptiness between them.
Right, the rule of proximity.
Yeah. Let's talk about proximity.
Proximity is the absolute bedrock of visual hierarchy. The rule dictates that the human brain will automatically group components together based purely on how close they are to one another in physical space.
Okay.
We use white space or negative space as an invisible structural beam to create these groupings.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second,
Mhm.
because a lot of stakeholders I've worked with, they view white space as totally wasted space.
Oh, the classic make it pop and push it all above the fold argument.
Yes, they want to cram as much data, as many features, and as many metrics onto the dashboard as humanly possible so the user doesn't have to scroll.
Right.
So if we start grouping things with massive gutters of white space, aren't we just hiding information?
That's a super common and honestly incredibly destructive misconception from product managers.
Tell me why.
Let's look at the cognitive tax of a cramped interface. When you remove white space and place elements at random or equidistant intervals, you are forcing the user's visual cortex to manually analyze the semantic meaning of every single item.
Just to figure out what goes together.
Exactly. If you have a settings menu and the change password input field is the exact same distance from the delete account button as it is from the save changes button.
The brain panics.
It does. Because the physical closeness implies a functional relationship.
That makes total sense. If we go back to the physical world, think about a commercial kitchen in a high-end restaurant.
Okay, I like this analogy.
If the kitchen is designed properly, the chef's knives, the cutting board, and the prep bowls are all in immediate proximity to the primary workstation.
Right, they form a functional group.
Exactly. The spatial grouping tells the chef's brain, this is the prep zone.
Yes. Now imagine if the knives were kept next to the dishwashing sink.
Oh, God.
And the cutting boards were above the deep fryer and the prep bowls were in the walk-in freezer.
You'd have a literal nervous breakdown trying to chop an onion. It would be impossible.
Exactly the same principle applies to an interface. When proximity rules are broken, you create digital chaos.
The cognitive load just skyrockets.
It does, because the user has to constantly cross-reference elements to figure out what belongs where. By using deliberate white space, you are pre-sorting the information for the user's brain.
You're kind of holding their hand through the data.
You're saying, here is a cluster. You can process these 4 links as a single family. It actually makes parsing a dense dashboard much faster, even if they have to scroll slightly.
Because they aren't bogged down decoding the layout itself.
Exactly.
Okay, so white space is our sorting mechanism. But within those clusters, the source material introduces another layer of the brain's pattern recognition, which is similarity.
Yes, similarity is huge.
And this is where the biology gets genuinely fascinating to me, because the brain doesn't treat all visual differences equally, does it?
Not even close. When our brain groups similar objects, it is scanning defining features, things like color, size, shape, and texture.
Okay.
But the processing speeds for these features are dramatically different based on how our visual cortex is wired. Color is the absolute undisputed champion.
Really? Color wins.
Yes. We process color much faster than size and significantly faster than shape.
Why is that? From a biological standpoint, why does color win the race?
It comes down to how visual signals travel from the retina to the primary visual cortex at the back of your brain.
Okay, taking us back to anatomy class.
A little bit, yeah. Color processing is largely parallel. The photoreceptors in your eyes pick up wavelengths of light, and that signal is blasted through the visual pathways almost instantaneously.
So it's just immediate.
You perceive a patch of red almost before you are consciously aware of it. Shape, on the other hand, requires edge detection.
Edge detection, what does that mean?
Yes. To understand a shape, your brain has to trace the borders of an object, identify where the object ends and the background begins, calculate the angles.
That sounds like a lot of work.
It is. And then it has to compare that geometry against a mental database of known shapes to finally say, ah, that's a hexagon.
Wow.
That serial processing requires milliseconds of extra computation.
That makes total sense. If I have a grid of 20 identical squares on a screen, and I change the shape of one to a circle, my eye will eventually find it.
Right, eventually.
But if I leave them all as squares and simply change the color of one square from gray to neon green, my eye snaps to it before I even realize I'm looking at it.
Exactly. The green bypasses all that heavy cognitive lifting.
Which brings us to the most critical application of this for a designer.
Right.
If the brain is desperately trying to group similar things, and color is the strongest grouping tool we have, what happens when we intentionally introduce an element that refuses to be grouped?
Then you create the isolation effect, also known as the anomaly.
Yes, the anomaly. Let's talk about that.
If you create an object that is drastically different from everything else in its proximity, using a contrasting color, a massive size difference, maybe both, it cannot be assimilated into the surrounding mental pattern.
It stands out.
The brain flags it as an anomaly. And because our survival instincts wire us to pay immediate attention to anomalies in our environment,
Because it could be a threat, right?
exactly, that object becomes intensely, unavoidably visible.
But hold on, let's talk about the practical danger of this.
Okay.
Because I've seen junior designers learn about the isolation effect, and suddenly, literally everything becomes an anomaly.
Oh, the confetti approach.
Yes. The Add to Cart button is bright orange, the newsletter sign-up is neon purple, the notification bell is pulsing red.
It's a nightmare.
If everything is shouting for attention, doesn't the isolation effect just, well, collapse entirely?
It absolutely collapses. Anomaly only works if there is a rigid, disciplined baseline of order to contrast against.
Give me an example of that.
If a room is entirely painted white, a single red fire extinguisher stands out instantly.
Right.
But if the room is painted in a chaotic splatter of 50 different neon colors, the fire extinguisher becomes invisible. It just blends into the noise.
So as a UI designer, you have to be incredibly stingy with your anomalies.
You have to guard them fiercely. This is exactly how you design highly effective call to action, or CTA, buttons.
Okay, walk me through that.
The vast majority of your interface should rely on muted, harmonious colors and consistent shapes to establish a calm, predictable baseline using those rules of proximity and similarity.
So you build a quiet room.
Exactly. You build a quiet room, and then for the one single action you desperately want the user to take, like finalizing a purchase, you drop in the anomaly.
The loud button.
The user doesn't even have to read the button. Their visual cortex has already prioritized it.
It's visual manipulation at its finest.
Yeah.
You lull the brain into a sense of security with grouped, similar elements, and then hijack its attention with a burst of color.
That's the power of the anomaly.
But what happens when the shapes we are showing the user aren't even complete?
Moving into Gestalt territory.
Yeah, the book moves into this concept of the rule of closure. And I gotta say, that's completely shifted my perspective on iconography.
The rule of closure dives straight into Gestalt psychology. It's the principle that the human brain will subconsciously fill in missing visual information.
So it connects the dots for us.
Literally, it perceives a fragmented set of objects as a recognizable, complete shape. We absolutely hate unresolved visual tension.
Right, the book uses the example of a dashed line forming an arrow. We don't see a series of disconnected short line segments in blank spaces.
Yeah, we don't.
We see an arrow indicating direction. Our brain acts like autocomplete for our eyes.
It's incredible. The classic corporate examples always brought up in design education are the WWF Panda logo and the IBM logo.
Oh, the panda is such a good example.
Right. The panda is just a collection of abstract black splotches, ears, eyes, arms, legs, just floating on a white background.
There are massive gaps where the white of the panda's head and belly simply blend into the white background.
No outlines at all.
Yet nobody sees floating black blobs. Your brain instantly draws invisible lines to connect the shapes.
But how does this translate to a junior designer building a mobile app? Because, we aren't all designing iconic logos every day.
Yeah, how do we actually use this?
It translates directly to your iconography and how dense your interface feels. In modern UI design, the trend has heavily shifted toward minimalism. We use outlined icons or vastly simplified glyphs rather than highly detailed, realistic illustrations.
And closure is why that works.
The rule of closure is the absolute engine that makes minimalism work.
Let's unpack that. Why is a simplified, abstract icon actually better for the user than a highly detailed, realistic one? Wouldn't realism be easier to understand?
You would think so, but it goes back to that edge detection processing we talked about earlier.
Oh, right, the cognitive heavy lifting.
Yeah, if you draw a hyper-realistic house icon for your home button, complete with shingles, window panes, a doorknob, a chimney,
It looks nice, but
you are forcing the visual cortex to process dozens of intersecting lines and shapes.
Yeah.
That requires a really high amount of cognitive RAM.
it's just visual clutter at that point.
Exactly. But if you strip that icon down to its most fundamental geometry, A triangle resting on top of a square, maybe with a small gap at the bottom for a door.
You've removed like 90% of the visual data?
Yes. You provide just enough structural clues, and the user's brain instantly applies the rule of closure to fill in the rest.
Triangle on square equals house. House equals home.
So you're offloading the rendering process from the screen to the user's brain.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And because the brain's predictive models are so insanely fast, this offloading actually speeds up navigation. It prevents information overload.
Your interface feels lighter.
It feels snappier and way less exhausting to look at because you aren't bombarding the visual cortex with unnecessary pixels.
That is a massive paradigm shift. You're not designing minimalist icons because it's trendy. You're doing it to save the user's biological processing power.
It's pure utility dressed as aesthetics.
But speaking of things the brain loves to process easily, let's talk about symmetry.
Oh, symmetry. This is a big one.
The book makes a massive point about this, but I think it requires some serious nuance, especially for folks coming from traditional graphic design backgrounds.
Symmetry is deeply evolutionarily comforting to us.
It really is.
Symmetrical objects and layouts are universally perceived as more visually satisfying and inherently beautiful. In nature, symmetry indicates health, stability, and genetic fitness.
Right. A symmetrical face, a symmetrical leaf, these are safe.
Exactly. Asymmetry in nature often indicates disease, mutation, or instability.
But here is where I really want to dig in, because the source material points out that in fine art or traditional print design, perfect symmetry is often mocked.
Oh, absolutely. They call it the aesthetic of fools.
Yeah, it's viewed as lazy or unimaginative by traditional artists.
They want you to break the mold.
Exactly. If you go to art school, you are taught the rule of thirds. You are taught to intentionally break symmetry to create visual tension.
Right.
You put the focal point off-center so the viewer's eye is forced to roam around the canvas. You want the viewer to feel challenged. You want them to stop and interpret that tension.
But that is the fundamental divergence between art and user interface design.
Tell me more.
A poster or a painting demands your contemplation. An interface facilitates your action.
So we don't want to challenge the user.
Not at all. In UI design, symmetry is paramount.
But doesn't perfect symmetry run the risk of making an app look incredibly boring? Like, I don't know, a sterile white hospital hallway.
That's a valid fear.
If everything is perfectly balanced on the left and the right, where is the personality?
That's where we have to distinguish between macro symmetry and micro anomalies.
Okay.
We aren't saying every single page must be a perfect mirror image. What UI demands is structural symmetry.
The underlying grid.
Yes.
Yeah.
The container, the grid, the columns, the navigation bar must be balanced. If your foundational layout is asymmetrical, the user experiences cognitive friction.
Cognitive friction. Let's define that for the listener really quickly.
Cognitive friction is the mental resistance a user feels when an interface doesn't behave or present itself according to their subconscious expectations.
So when things feel off.
Yeah. If the left side of your screen features massive typography and dense imagery, and the right side is mostly empty space with a few tiny links,
It feels lopsided.
the layout is heavily weighted to one side. The brain cannot find a central anchor point.
The eye just darts around frantically looking for the center of gravity.
Precisely. And every millisecond the brain spends trying to decode the asymmetrical layout is a millisecond. It is not spending evaluating your actual product or content.
The user just feels lost.
They feel that spike of anxiety we discussed at the top of the show.
So symmetry is a map.
By utilizing a symmetrical, balanced grid, you eliminate the cognitive friction of wayfinding. You give the brain a map it can read instantly.
And then you add the personality.
Exactly. Then within that symmetrical grid, you can use your anomalies, your contrasting colors or unique shapes, to inject personality and guide attention.
UI design doesn't want to challenge you. It just wants to be your friend. It wants to get out of your way.
That's beautifully said.
Okay, so we've built a structurally sound, symmetrical foundation. We've grouped our elements with white space and color. But interfaces aren't static paintings.
No, they are highly dynamic.
Users scroll. Elements animate. We have to guide the visual flow.
Moving into the mechanics of visual flow, we have to look at the rule of continuity. And this brings us back to the biology of how the eye actually moves.
Talking about saccades, right? The way our eyes jump.
Exactly. When you read a page or scan a dashboard, your eyes don't glide in a perfectly smooth, continuous motion like a camera panning across a landscape.
They don't.
No. The extraocular muscles move the eye in rapid, jerky jumps called saccades. pausing briefly to fixate and process information.
And the rule of continuity is about making those jumps as predictable and effortless as possible.
Correct. The most basic application in UI is vertical rhythm and alignment.
Give us an example.
If you have a list of articles, the text should all align to the exact same left margin. When the margin is consistent, the brain calibrates the distance of the saccadic jump.
It knows exactly where to land.
It knows exactly where the eye needs to land for the next line.
But the second you break that alignment, say one paragraph is indented an inch further or a bulleted list is misaligned, what happens neurologically?
The pre-calibrated jump fails. The eye lands in the wrong spot, realizes the text isn't there, and the motor system has to execute a secondary corrective movement to find the new margin.
It feels like a microscopic stutter.
It does. Do that enough times on a page, and the user experiences severe visual fatigue.
That makes perfect sense. But the concept from the book that absolutely blew my mind regarding visual continuity is the neuroscience of sharp corners.
Oh, the sharp corner revelation is incredible. It's one of those micro details that separates amateur design from world-class UI.
The text points out that a sharp 90-degree corner literally slows the human brain down.
It really does.
And I used to think of this with a driving analogy. Like if you're driving a car on a track with hard right angles, you have to slam on the brakes, turn the wheel hard, and accelerate again.
Right.
Whereas a curved track lets you maintain speed. But it's actually much more biological than that, isn't it?
It is entirely biological. It has to do with the fovea.
The fovea.
Yes, the tiny central pit in your retina responsible for sharp, detailed vision.
Okay, I'm tracking.
When your eye tracks the outer boundary of an object, like a container card on a dashboard, it is physically tracing the line.
Yeah.
When that line hits a sharp 90-degree angle, the visual tracking system essentially hits a wall.
The literal wall.
The eye must completely halt its momentum, process the sharp change in direction, and pivot the visual vector 90 degrees.
That's a literal biological speed bump.
It is. But if you replace that sharp corner with a smooth, rounded radius, the math completely changes.
Because it's a curve.
A curve allows the visual tracking system to maintain its momentum. The eye can glide around the boundary of the shape without the motor system having to perform a hard stop and pivot.
That is staggering. So when Apple introduced rounded corners across their entire iOS ecosystem years ago,
It wasn't just aesthetics.
right, it wasn't just a cutesy aesthetic trend to make things look soft, they were optimizing the interface for the fovea. They were removing the mechanical speed bumps from the user's visual tracking.
It is a microscopic optimization, sure. But when you apply rounded corners to 50 different elements on a single screen, buttons, image containers, modal windows,
It adds up.
you are saving the user's extraocular muscles hundreds of microscopic stops and starts. The cumulative effect is an interface that feels liquid, fast, and remarkably effortless to consume.
Okay, my mind is thoroughly blown by the corner geometry, but let's look at actual motion on the screen.
Animations, right?
Not just the eye moving over static shapes, but the shapes themselves moving. Animations, drop-downs, carousels.
This is governed by the common fate rule.
Common fate. Sounds dramatic.
It states that objects moving in the exact same direction with the exact same velocity are perceived by the brain as a single, unified group.
Right. The classic real-world example the book gives is a flock of birds flying in a V formation.
It's the perfect example.
There might be 100 individual geese up there, but because they are perfectly synchronized in their speed and trajectory, our brain doesn't process 100 distinct biological entities.
No, we don't count them.
We process one giant moving V shape. The shared motion binds them together.
Exactly.
So how do we leverage this as UI designers?
The most obvious application is the drop-down menu.
Okay.
If you click a Services tab, and a list of 10 different links expands downward. If those links all slide down at the exact same speed, your brain perceives the entire list as one solid piece of material unfurling.
But what if they don't? Let's say I want to be clever and add a cascading animation where the first link drops fast, the second link drops slightly slower, and they all kind of bounce into place at different times.
Oh, please don't do that.
Why not?
Then you have completely shattered the common fate rule. The brain no longer sees one unified menu.
What does it see?
It sees 10 distinct, independent objects hurtling around the screen. It triggers a chaos response. You are forcing the user's working memory to track 10 separate moving targets instead of one.
It's like watching a swarm of flies instead of a flock of birds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you see this applied brilliantly in horizontal side-scrolling carousels, like on Netflix or Disney+.
Right, when you're browsing movies.
When you swipe right to look at more movie posters, the entire row moves simultaneously at the exact same pixel per second velocity.
Your brain groups the row as a single ribbon of content.
The choreography of motion establishes order.
It makes the digital interface feel grounded in physical reality. Like these pixels are actually bolted to the same piece of metal behind the glass of my phone.
That illusion of physical mechanics is incredibly comforting to the user.
Okay, we have built a masterful interface here. We've used white space, we've isolated our CTA buttons with color, we've smoothed out the corners for the fovea, and we've choreographed the animations perfectly.
A perfectly relaxed visual state.
The user is visually relaxed. But now comes the moment of truth. The user actually has to interact with the system and make a choice.
This is the hard part.
And this is where we have to confront the absolute hard-coded limits of the human brain.
The cognitive ceiling?
Right. We're moving away from visual perception and into working memory and decision-making. The source material brings up two foundational laws here, Miller's law and Hicks' law.
Both are critical.
Let's start with Miller. What is the biological limit of our short-term active processing?
Miller's law deals directly with cognitive load, the finite amount of information the working memory can hold at one time.
And it's not a lot, is it?
While it fluctuates slightly depending on the complexity of the data, the psychological consensus outlined in the text is that the average human mind can only hold about 7 objects, plus or minus 2, in its working memory simultaneously.
7 objects. That is astonishingly low.
It is. Think about the working memory like a waiter taking orders at a table without a notepad.
Okay.
They can remember the first person's drink, the second person's appetizer, the third person's steak.
They look like a pro.
But by the time they get to the 8th person's complex dietary restriction, the first person's drink order literally falls out of their hippocampus.
The buffer is just full.
Yes, the older data is simply overwritten.
I love that waiter analogy because it perfectly describes the feeling of using a bloated B2B software dashboard.
Oh, absolutely.
If I log into an analytics platform and there are 15 different metric charts, a sidebar with 20 navigation links, and a top bar with 6 different dropdowns,
You're overwhelmed instantly.
I am the waiter with a table of 40 people. My brain's RAM is instantly maxed out. I can't process what I'm looking at, so I process nothing.
You experience cognitive gridlock, and this naturally leads directly into Hicks' law.
Okay, let's talk about Hicks' law.
It maps the relationship between the number of choices and the time it takes to make a decision.
Hicks' law is essentially the mathematical proof, the paradox of choice.
Yes, it is. Hicks' law states that the time and effort required to make a decision increases logarithmically with the number and complexity of choices presented.
So more options equals more problems.
It shatters the myth that giving users more options provides a better experience.
And I fought this battle so many times.
With clients.
Yes. You sit down with a client and they want every single feature accessible from the main screen. They say, we don't want to hide anything. We want the user to have absolute freedom to choose.
It's such a common trap.
How do you push back against that?
You explain the biological cost of evaluation.
Biological cost.
When you present a user with 10 different options in a navigation menu, the brain cannot just intuitively pick the right one.
You have to do the work.
It has to read option 1, hold it in working memory, read option 2, hold it, compare option 1 and 2. Now read option 3.
The waiter's dropping plates.
The algorithmic complexity of comparing all those options grows exponentially. According to the text, this heavy cognitive lifting causes disorientation, irritation, and decision fatigue.
And what's the real-world consequence of decision fatigue?
Abandonment. Plain and simple.
They just leave.
The higher the number of items, the longer the processing time. If the processing time exceeds the user's motivation to complete the task, they simply abandon the app.
They just close the window.
They close the window rather than expend the glucose required to figure out your menu.
So translate this into a hard rule for the listener. For the junior designer trying to build a navigation structure tomorrow.
The absolute hard limit, derived from Miller's law, is never to exceed 7 options in a single cognitive chunk.
Keep it under 7.
Whether it's the main navigation bar, the number of radio buttons in a form, or the categories in a dropdown. Never more than 7.
Okay.
But the text goes further and offers an expert strategy. The optimal sweet spot to minimize cognitive friction is between 4 and 5 options.
4 to 5 options requires brutal discipline.
It really does.
You have to kill your darlings. You have to force the product managers to actually prioritize what matters.
That's the designer's job.
But what if you were designing something where you absolutely must present complex choices?
Like what?
Like a sauce pricing page with 4 different tiers, and each tier has 20 bullet points of features. How do you prevent Hicks' law from destroying your conversion rate?
The book offers a phenomenal cognitive pressure release valve for exactly this scenario.
I need this valve.
It's highlighting a recommended option.
Ah, the most popular badge.
Exactly. When you take the middle pricing tier, make the card slightly larger, perhaps give it a subtle colored border.
An anomaly?
Yes, an anomaly, and you slap a badge on it that says most popular. When you do that, you are fundamentally altering the decision-making mechanics.
How so?
You are providing a heuristic, a mental shortcut. You are telling the exhausted brain, if you do not have the cognitive energy to cross-reference all 80 bullet points across these 4 tiers, don't worry.
We did the work for you.
Thousands of other people have already done the math, and they chose this one. It's safe.
It's social proof acting as a cognitive bypass.
Yes, you allow the user to bypass the grueling evaluation phase and jump straight to the action phase.
Which is what you want them to do.
Exactly. As the text notes, this significantly speeds up decision-making and dramatically reduces the irritation associated with complex choices.
It's like going to a massive, intimidating restaurant with a 12-page menu. You feel Hicks' law paralyzing you.
You don't know what to order.
And then the waiter steps in and says, our signature dish is the roast chicken. It's what we're famous for.
Boom! Decision made.
Cognitive load gone. As a designer, you have to be that helpful waiter.
That is exactly the role you were playing.
Okay, we have covered an incredible amount of ground. We've looked at spatial mechanics, Gestalt psychology, eye tracking biology, and the limits of working memory.
It's a lot of science.
But we have to pull all of this together. How do all these granular subconscious rules combine to affect the user's final conscious judgment of the software?
This is where we arrive at the most profound and perhaps the most controversial concept in the chapter.
I'm ready.
The aesthetic usability effect.
The halo effect of beauty. This is where perception literally overwrites reality.
It is a documented cognitive bias. The rule states that a visually pleasing, modern, and symmetrical interface will have such an overwhelmingly positive psychological effect on the user that they will literally perceive the product as being functionally easier to use.
Let me stop you there. Are you saying they just like it more? Or are you saying their brain genuinely believes the mechanics of the app are superior simply because it looks pretty?
Their brain genuinely believes the mechanics are superior. The visual polish creates a halo effect that infects their judgment of the functionality.
That sounds insane. I really want to push back on this heavily.
Go for it.
If I log into my banking app and the interface is stunning, beautiful gradients, perfect symmetry, rounded corners, but when I try to transfer money, the button lags for 5 seconds, or the form deletes my input.
You're getting mad.
I'm not going to forgive the app just because it's beautiful. I'm going to be furious. I feel like this aesthetic effect has hard limits.
You are absolutely right, and the source material is very careful to issue a crucial warning here. Beauty cannot save a fundamentally broken product.
So there's a baseline.
The aesthetic usability effect only operates if there is a baseline level of functional usability. If the app literally does not work, the illusion shatters immediately.
The pretty colors don't help anymore.
Actually, the beautiful design might amplify the frustration because it feels deceptive.
It's like going on a date with someone who is incredibly charming and impeccably dressed.
Okay, another great analogy.
If they accidentally spill a glass of water, the halo effect is active. You laugh it off, you think it's a cute, clumsy moment, and you forgive them instantly because the overall presentation is so high quality.
Precisely. Minor usability flaws are masked. A button that takes half a second too long to load or a slightly clunky transition is totally forgiven.
But if that same impeccably dressed person starts insulting the waiter and throwing plates,
The date is over.
the baseline of acceptable behavior is broken. The good looks don't save them. You are walking out.
The exact same human psychology applies to digital products, but here is the deeper insight into why aesthetics matter so much.
Okay, what?
It isn't vanity. It isn't about winning design awards. As the text explicitly states, the primary function of aesthetic beauty in UI is to build trust.
Trust. Let's dig into that. Why does an aligned column of text make me trust a piece of software?
Because of the evolutionary signals we discussed earlier. Order, symmetry, and intentional proximity signal competence and stability.
It feels professional.
When an interface looks chaotic, when a text box is misaligned, when the colors clash, when the fonts are inconsistent, the user's subconscious amygdala flags it as a chaotic, unpredictable environment.
They might not be able to articulate why it looks bad. They don't know what the rule of proximity is.
They don't need to know the terms at all. Their instinct simply screams, "This is half-baked."
Wow.
And the psychological leap they make is devastating. If the creators of this software were too careless or incompetent to align this input field correctly, how can I possibly trust them to encrypt my password?
That is a huge leap, but it makes so much sense. The aesthetic quality is interpreted as a direct reflection of the underlying engineering quality.
Always. And the text points out that this is absolutely critical for high-stakes industries.
Like which ones?
If you are designing a mobile game, maybe users will tolerate a slightly chaotic interface. But if you are designing for banking, finance, or medical applications, anywhere that personal information, health data, or money is involved, aesthetic failure is fatal.
Because the stakes are so high.
Exactly. If a medical portal looks like it was thrown together in an afternoon, the user feels a primal lack of safety. They will not enter their social security number, they will abandon the product.
Beauty signals competence. Beauty signals safety. It all comes full circle back to that spike of anxiety we talked about at the very beginning of the show.
It really does.
Your ultimate job as a designer is to use the biological rules of perception to suppress that anxiety and construct an environment of immediate, undeniable trust.
You are a structural engineer for human emotion.
What a phenomenal way to frame it. Okay, we have excavated some incredibly dense, deeply valuable mechanics of the human mind today. Let's wrap this up.
Let's do it.
If you are listening to this and you are building your career, I hope the myth of the tortured artistic genius is dead to you now. Being a UI designer isn't just about picking trending colors.
I know, it's neuroscience.
You are an architect of perception.
Yeah.
You are using white space to organize data. You are manipulating the visual cortex with color anomalies. You are easing the extraocular muscles with rounded corners. And you are protecting the user's fragile working memory with Hicks' law.
Beautiful summary.
And if you want to truly master these concepts, if you are ready to stop designing unknowingly and start making the conscious, fact-backed decisions that will accelerate your career, you absolutely must get your hands on the source material we dissected today.
Highly recommend it.
We have been deep diving into Chapter 06, Perception from the Phenomenal Book Design User Interface.
It's a game changer.
I highly recommend you go read the entire thing. You can find it right now at this exact link, https://hypeforacademy.gumroad.com/Louis book.
It's all there.
And to make it completely frictionless for you, you don't even have to type that out.
Yeah.
You can buy the book right now by simply scanning the QR code of that exact book link, which we have placed directly in the description below.
Super easy.
Open the description, scan the QR code, and get this book into your workflow. And before you go, please explicitly follow the show for more technical design breakdowns and career-building content just like this. We are here to dismantle the complex theories and give you the actionable tools to build better products.
As we sign off, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought based on the biology we've uncovered today.
Let's hear it.
We have established that our brains act as an automatic autocomplete, filling in missing shapes. We know our visual cortex is biologically hijacked by color anomalies before we're even consciously aware of them.
Right.
We know our working memory crashes if presented with more than 7 options. And we know we instinctively, evolutionarily trust software simply because the layout is mathematically symmetrical.
That's true.
So it raises a fascinating philosophical question. When you are navigating your favorite apps tomorrow morning, tapping buttons and making choices, how much of your digital life is actually driven by your own conscious free will? And how much of it is just a brilliant designer skillfully playing the biological instrument of your subconscious perception?
Are you really deciding to click subscribe, or were your fovea and working memory perfectly manipulated into doing it?
Oh.
Think about that the next time you open an app and feel that comforting sense of intuition.